Hey there and welcome. Have you ever looked at the sheer number of mutual fund schemes out there and just felt completely lost? It's like trying to pick one thing off a menu that has thousands of items. Well, today we're going to slice right through all that noise. We are breaking down how to choose the right mutual fund into a simple, step-by-step guide. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to tackle this in 5 straightforward steps. First, we'll start with the most important person in this equation, you. Then we'll get into understanding risk, picking a strategy, and knowing what key numbers to look for. And finally, we'll put it all together so you can make a choice you feel really good about.
First things first. Before you even think about looking at a fund's past performance, we got to look in the mirror. You see, the best investment strategy out there isn't some secret formula. It's the one that's built specifically for your life, your goals, and your timeline.
And yeah, this is the exact moment where so many people just freeze. It's total choice paralysis. But look, that feeling is completely normal. The great news is there's a way to sort through the chaos. And it all begins by using your own life as the ultimate filter. It really does all boil down to this: your goals, your financial situation, how much time you have. These are the things that matter most. A fund that's absolutely perfect for your neighbor could be a terrible fit for you. Why? Because your personal situation is the foundation for every single smart investment decision you're ever going to make. So let's figure out your risk profile by asking 3 key questions. First, your need to take risk. What kind of returns do you actually need to hit your financial goals? Second, your ability to take risk. This is the reality check. Can your finances actually take a hit if the market has a bad year? And third, your willingness to take risk. This one's all about your gut. How do you really feel when your portfolio's value is bouncing all over the place? For this to work, all 3 have to line up.
And that leads us straight into your investment horizon. This is a super important concept, but it's really simple. It's just the countdown clock on your investment. For example, if you're saving for retirement in 30 years, you've got a ton of time to recover from any market downturns, so you can afford to take on more risk. But if you need that money for a down payment on a house next year, whoa, that's a completely different story. Preservation becomes way more important than growth.
All right, so we've done our homework on ourselves. Now it's time to turn that focus outward. We're going to use our personal profile as a map to start navigating the world of mutual funds and really understand what they're all about.
Luckily for us, the regulators have given us this really handy little tool called the Riskometer. You'll see this on every fund document, and it gives you a super simple at-a-glance idea of how risky a fund is. Think of it as your first quick checkpoint to see if a fund is even in the right ballpark for you.
Now those levels you see on the meter, they pretty much fall into 3 main buckets. You've got debt funds, which are all about stability and regular income, so they're on the lower end of the risk scale. Then you have hybrid funds in the middle, trying to give you a balance of both growth and safety. And then you've got equity funds. These are aiming for long-term growth, which, you guessed it, comes with high to very high risk. Your risk profile should point you toward one of these categories to start.
Okay, next up is a really big fork in the road: the whole active versus passive debate. This is a huge choice you have to make. Do you want a fund manager, a supposed expert, actively picking stocks and trying to beat the market? Or would you rather have a fund that just aims to be the market by tracking an index for a very low cost? Let's break that down. Active funds are run by a real person or team making decisions, hoping their skill will get you better returns. But that expertise costs money, so their fees are higher. Passive funds, on the other hand, are kind of on autopilot. They just buy whatever stocks are in an index, like the Nifty 50. Since there's no genius fund manager to pay, the costs are way, way lower. So let's say you've narrowed it down. You've picked a category, maybe a large cap equity fund, and you've decided you want an active manager. But now you're staring at 2 funds that look almost identical. What do? Well, it's time to put on our detective hats and dig into some of the finer details.
First clue to look for: portfolio turnover. This number basically tells you how often the fund manager is buying and selling stocks. Think of it as how trigger-happy they are. A really high number can be a red flag because all that trading costs money, and those costs chip away directly at your returns. It might also mean the manager doesn't have a very steady hand.
Okay, this next one is huge. It's the total expense ratio, or TER. This is basically the annual price tag of owning the fund, and it's a guaranteed drag on your performance. A 1% TER means your investment has to grow by 1% each year just to break even. Trust me, even tiny differences in the TER can add up to a massive amount of money over 10 or 20 years. Lower is almost always better.
And finally, take a look at the fund's age and size. Think of an older fund like a seasoned veteran.
It's been through a few market cycles, the good and the bad, so you have a much better idea of how it performs under pressure. Size matters too. A fund that's become absolutely massive might not be as nimble and could have trouble investing in smaller companies without moving the whole market.
All right, let's take a breath. We've looked at ourselves, we understand the different risks, we picked a style, and we know what numbers to look for in the fine print. Now let's bring it all home and make that final choice with confidence.
So here it is, a final checklist of some golden rules. Do make sure the scheme actually fits your needs. Do stick to the plan you made for your asset allocation. And here's a big one. Don't just chase last year's top performer. That's like driving by only looking in the rearview mirror. And finally, don't forget about taxes and any exit loads, which are basically fees for selling too early.
You know, there's this fantastic quote that really just hits the nail on the head. Diversification is a protection against ignorance. It's so powerful because it admits something really important. None of us are fortune tellers. Since we can't possibly know for sure which investment will be the next big thing, spreading our bets is just plain smart. It's our built-in safety net against being wrong.
So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. When you look at your investments, is your portfolio actually built for your journey and your goals? Or is it just a collection of last year's hot trends? A well-chosen fund isn't about finding the flashiest thing out there. It's about finding the right tool for your personal financial journey. Thanks so much for joining.